I want you to stop thinking of MDF terrain as separate kits to build and paint, and start planning how you can integrate it into what you already own. Stop building MDF terrain, start integrating it. With some minor precision kit bashing work, you can extend your plastic Necromunda or Horus Heresy Zone Mortalis kits with cheaper MDF kit parts. Today we're going to solve that age-old problem of why is there never enough walls, and we're going to do it with a few different things. Welcome back. First, I'm going to have to do a bit of a preamble. Yeah, I know YouTube wants you to rush through a video like napping through the first 10 slides of a workplace PowerPoint presentation, but do we really all want to live in a world where the answer comes before the context? This is YouTube, not Jeopardy. My last video on MDF terrain was the first part of a two-parter. The second part was a community poll, so thank you to everyone who took part. It confirmed some of my suspicions and, well, opened my eyes on a few others. I basically asked which type of terrain do people prefer for Necromunda or 40k based on time versus detail versus money. This is what came back. Games Workshop terrain ranked pretty high, and it wasn't really what I was expecting by a mile, not at the ever-rising cost and volume you need for a decent table. MDF terrain, however, tanked. Harder than Bud Light at a Kid Rock concert. I love MDF stuff, but I totally get it. It can be a pain to build and paint, and at the end, you can still tell it's MDF. 3D printing didn't surprise me because, as awesome as it is, a lot of people haven't taken the plunge for varying reasons, but I'd imagine learning a new hobby to continue with your first hobby is somewhere near the top. Now if you take the last two together along with Games Workshop's higher ranking, you can deduce that people buy Games Workshop stuff, want more of it, but the price, oh my god, the price. So they then scratch build other terrain to use in conjunction with Games Workshop stuff, which makes total financial sense. But, and this is the part that interests me, is it in conjunction with or connected to? The two are different. The former, in conjunction, is bits of different terrain on the same table. You've probably done this yourself. A bit of Games Workshop stuff on the left, a bit of scratch-built terrain on the right, maybe a walkway in between, maybe not. Little islands of different style terrain. It works. It's not optimal though. It's adding to your table, not extending it to make it even more versatile. I think the goal should be the latter, connected to. Bits of different terrain that literally connect to Games Workshop plastic in a modular way. Of course you can scratch build all this stuff. I showed you how to do it with concrete walls and platforms. But what if there was another way, where a good chunk of that scratch building was already done and all you had to do was some minor kit bashing of cheaper existing MDF kits, saving you a whole load of time in the process. Hence why that video came out before this one. See, there's madness to the method. I want to show you how to take one or two of these MDF kits and make it work connected to Games Workshop's plastic kits. Because I know you've all been thinking the same as me. Why on earth don't these kits have enough walls? We're going to use two kits today. One from TTCombat, their Iron Labyrinth, and one from Mad Gaming Terrain, the Complex. I want you to start thinking differently about how to use MDF kits, not just build them as per instructions. It would be great if these things just worked off the sprue, but they don't. Making kits that would work with every other kit makes no sense for any business. They want you to buy their kit. But that's not what we want, is it? What we want is all this stuff to work together so we can build a table that looks great at the amount of money we want to spend. Let's get to it. This is an Iron Labyrinth long wall section. When assembled, it's at the exact width of a plastic Zone Mortalis long wall, and exactly the same height too, give or take. When I say exact, I mean exact. There is no margin for assembly error at all. MDF kit tolerances are not as precise as plastic kits. What you'd think is going together at 90 degrees just isn't. The slightest misassembly and they won't fit perfectly, so be prepared to do some sanding down to get it to fit precisely. If you're not going to use platforms or add any second levels, you can just assemble a bunch of these and use them with your Games Workshop stuff perfectly well. But what if you wanted some of them with the ability to have the platforms sit over the top? We absolutely don't want to start cutting bits off the bottom of the platforms because that would kill the modularity we already have with the Games Workshop kits, as the underside of the platforms slot into the tops of the walls. So we need to mod the MDF to allow them to sit over the top. That's a simple case of building the wall without adding the top, and then cutting off the connections. Now the underside of the platform slots neatly over the new Iron Labyrinth walls. You don't actually need to do any more to them than this, but the Iron Labyrinth kit also comes with a few greebles, so you can also add those if you fancied a wall that looked a bit different. This works in exactly the same way with the Iron Labyrinth short walls. You can keep them modular, or glue them to your existing columns and shapes, like in my columns and walls video, which I'll link to at the end for those who didn't see it. Because you didn't assemble these with the top on, you're left with a big hole. It doesn't really matter as you don't see it when you place the platforms on the top, and you can always use these upside down. If the hole bothers you, and well, it bothered me, you can glue in a piece of card and some pipes. These are just a felt tip pen and a straw cut to length. Now you can use these with or without platforms. And on the other side, I just glued some mesh. This plastic mesh is fantastic on MDF as it's super thin, easily cut, and creates a texture that hides the fact that your terrain is MDF. The second thing I wanted for my table were Gothic archways, so I picked up these from Mad Gaming Terrain from their complex range. These, however, are both the wrong height and the wrong width, but I wasn't going to let a little thing like measurements get in the way. You can sand these down too, but that's way more sanding than my lazy arms want to do. There's another way to fix this. I made two different kinds of these, one that goes over the top of the Games Workshop kits and one that sits under the platforms. On the first one, I just assembled it as normal and added a walkway using crochet mesh and railings. The mesh extends out on both sides to hook over the top of the columns. I wasn't too bothered that these were the wrong width for column spacing because I only wanted to use them at ground level with no second level, on a battle mat. But the other ones, I wanted to go underneath the platforms and work on second level, so both the height and the width needed to change. Turns out that in order to get these to work fully, you just need to cut off 5mm off the bottom of the arch pieces. This takes seconds to do with a razor saw. Now the height works. And for the width, instead of intense sanding, I just replaced the two MDF side pieces with 1mm thick card. Mount board to be exact. 1mm on one side and 2mm on the other, using two pieces of card glued together. Realistically, it's probably 2mm at one side and 1.5mm at the other, but for modularity I didn't really care. To cut out the card to the same shape, I literally just used the MDF sprue to trace the shape. You can absolutely do these same card sides with the first taller archway too, so they fit perfectly. In fact, if there's one tip I could give you with MDF kits, it's this. Try to get all the pieces out without breaking the MDF sprue, because what you're left with is a template to scratch build an identical model out of card simply by redrawing the whole thing through the holes. When you paint up all of these MDF bits that you've made to match your existing terrain and put them in place, the fact that it's MDF blends into the rest of the detail of the Games Workshop kits. And the final one is one you might have seen before in my previous video, but I'll mention it here again because walls. You can absolutely make more wall sections using plasma pipes. If you have any of these kits lying around, cut them down to 3 sections long, cap the end with a 25mm circle, and assemble in a variety of different ways. I guess if you take anything from this video, it should be this. With terrain, I want you to think about what you want on your table and look for things that might get you more than halfway there. With some minor tweaks and mods, quite a number of kits will work with other kits, and if most of the work on shapes and fittings is done for you, there's less work for you to get what you need. That's it for today. Now, if anyone moans at you that there aren't enough walls in Zone Mortalis for a Necromunda or Horus Heresy table, you can show them how to do it. It would be better for me if you sent them this video, but if you want to take the credit,